Hi, and welcome to the Guitar Learning Show. I'm Bob.
And I'm Kevin. So today we're here to talk about the brand new Fender Player II Series Stratocaster. And Bob brought along his Player One, so we could do a little bit of comparison between one and the other.
Yep.
And just a little background from me on how I arrived at this particular guitar. My previous Fenders have all been American Standard or American Ultra. I have an American Limited. So this is my first made in Mexico Fender Strat. And they made some upgrades that we'll talk about that made me want to try it out. So today we're just going to go through the specs of the guitar, do a little bit of a comparison between the two. I'll play a little bit, and hopefully this gives you a little more information on this new Fender model to help you decide if you do or do not want to purchase it. And before I forget about it, I did want to point out that I bought this from and I'm not promoting anybody, but this might help you. I bought this from a site called Pro Audio Star. And the reason I bought it from them is they list some things as being used on their site and have pretty substantial discounts on them. So this guitar, even though it's pretty much brand new, it was listed as used. And I think what happens is somebody bought it and sent it back within their return window. And I found a little scuff on the back of it that I was able to buff out, and there's no scuff anymore. So P.S., I bought this guitar, which lists out at $829. For, if I remember right, I paid $629. So humongous savings for something that is used.
Yeah. And again, not to plug anybody, but I've also bought guitars from Pro Audio Star in exactly the same situation where it had obviously been returned. One arrived with the hang tags still on the net. So
yeah, this still had the hang tags on it. I even recently took off the little Fender sticker that's here, but I haven't taken off the rest of the plastic yet. It's still a little too new for that. And the Bad Cat amplifier I recently bought, the amp head that's back here, I bought that from Pro Audio Star also, and I saved about $400 or $500 on that. And I can't see anything that's used on that amp. I mean, it doesn't look like anybody ever took it out of that box.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah, there's definitely good values to be found in used gear if you shop smart.
Yeah. So here we are. But this is pretty much a brand new guitar from all that I can see. It's definitely in much better condition than something I would find on the wall at my local guitar store that 30 or 40 or 50 people had already played.
Yeah. Yeah, you take them off the wall and the strings all feel weird and no.
Yeah, they're oxidized, like they've been sitting there forever. It's crazy.
Yep.
So you want to go over the specs?
Sure.
Alrighty. I'll hand that to you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go over the specs, and then then I think you should talk about what prompted you to buy. I mean, you've got a couple Strats. Just
I didn't need any more Strats. That's true.
So what prompted you to buy that one? But let's go over the specs first. So this is the Player II series. It is an alder body with a maple neck. The neck is the Fender Modern C shape. It has in this case, a rosewood fretboard. They're also available in maple fretboard. 22 medium jumbo frets, synthetic bone nut. It is a traditional 9.5-inch fretboard radius.
Yeah.
From a electronics perspective, it has the Players Series Alnico 2 humbucker in the bridge, with the Alnico 5 single coil Player Series in the neck in the middle. It's the traditional master volume 2 tones. It has a 2-point synchronized tremolo and bent steel saddles. It's all nickel chrome plated. The one change from the original Player series is they went from the modern Fender tuners to the vintage style. They call them, what do they call them? Classic gear.
Classic gear.
Classic gear tuners, right. So And that's pretty much from a spec perspective. So you weren't a fan of the Player One series, but the Player Two series came out and you decided to buy one.
Although the the biggest thing that I didn't like about the Player One was just the Pal Furrow fingerboards. Uh, I do like the rosewood. Any guitar I had ever looked at with the Pal Furrow, I didn't fall in love with it. Just didn't want to buy it. So P.S. And I do really enjoy the rosewood fretboards. I have a few guitars with maple, and I like the maple a lot. Also, I have a American Strat that has a nice maple fretboard like that one. But that was kind of the biggest drawback for me, or the biggest thing that kept me from buying the Mexican Strat in the past.
Yep. So if you're not familiar with, if you're relatively new to guitar and you're not familiar with all the differences in the neck woods and such, this is a rosewood. It has been used on Stratocasters going back to the early 60s. In 2017, I think, new regulations were passed called CITES, which put a lot of restrictions around rosewood crossing borders. So any guitar that had to be imported into the United States, what a lot of the manufacturers decided to do was go to alternatives. So Fender went to Pal Faro on their Mexican Stratocasters. They went to Indian Laurel on the import Far East Squire Stratocasters. However, shortly after, I think probably about 2019 or 2020, the CITES regulations were amended to exclude musical instruments. The problem wasn't the amount of rosewood being used in guitars. It was the clear cutting of rosewood trees in order to build furniture and things like that.
Okay.
So the restrictions stayed on for furniture, but they went away for musical instruments. And so we started to get rosewood back on our guitars. Now, another thing I noticed on this that's a little bit different is it looks like they went to a more vintage, on the maple, a more vintage staining, right? So if we take a look at the back of my neck, and it looks like it's showing up pretty good on the monitor. So this is a lighter, there's no tint at all. This has much more of a yellow brown, kind of a vintage looking tint, which goes nicely with going back to the vintage style tuners. Another big change was the neck profile. So the original Player series and most of the previous made in Mexico Stratocasters had a very sharp edge at the edge of the fretboard. So this on mine probably doesn't show on camera, but there's no rolled edges at all. On that one, though, they've rolled them quite a bit.
They have, yeah. So it's, and I do like the rolled edges. It makes it a little bit more comfortable going up and down the fretboard. And I do have a few guitars, quite a few actually now, that have rolled edges. It seems like a lot of manufacturers are starting to go to that as more of a standard in their entry and middle level guitars, whereas previously it was reserved for higher end, more expensive models.
I think a lot of the import brands started to kind of roll the edges of the fretboard in the manufacturing process, and it put a little pressure on the higher end brands to do the same, because it gives the neck kind of that really broken in feel, like you've been playing it for a long time.
Yep. I don't know, with the upgrades that Fender has made to this guitar and still keeping it, in a pretty reasonable price point. I mean, this guitar with the humbucker, it lists for $829, and I think the all single coils list for $799.
Yeah.
It's a lot of guitar for what it's costing. I mean, it'd be great if they cost less, but everything keeps going up. So, yeah.
No, they're fantastic guitars, and the prior to the Player series, the old Fender Standard Stratocaster, which was the name for the original, for the older made in Mexico Strats, they had ceramic pickups. They sounded good, but a lot of people immediately, they bought it for the body and the neck basically, and replaced the electronics. Now my Player One has had the electronics replaced, but really, what the only reason I replaced the electronics was I had a Stratocaster pickguard from another guitar that I sold that had boutique pickups in it, and I chose those over the ones that were in the Player series. But the ones in this Player 2 series, just they sound great.
They do. And before I received the guitar, I had a couple of things in mind that I might do down the road as an upgrade to it. One was if I didn't like the pickups, I would upgrade the pickups. They sound very good. They're kind of warm. They're definitely on the warm side. They seem like they have a little more mid-range to them than some of the other single coils that I have on my Fender Strats. I initially thought that I would not want to keep these tuners and I might want to replace them for locking tuners. And whenever I change strings on a guitar that I have that has locking tuners, I'm always like, yeah, all right, because it's so easy and so fast. But I kind of like the look of these vintage tuners. They're pretty cool.
They can be pretty easy to change strings on. I have several guitars that have the vintage tuners, including my number one, my red Telecaster. And there's a couple tricks to it, but once you get that down, they're very easy to change.
So the other thing, and this doesn't help it play or anything, but there is the 70th anniversary stamp on it, which on the higher end guitars, they are more expensive Fenders. They're putting something on the heel plate here, which I have a 2014 Fender Strat, and it's an American standard. That one has the 60th anniversary on the heel plate. So,
70th, 1954.
Yeah, it's a good year for guitars. That's for sure for me for guitars. So, I guess we could listen to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's hear it.
All right. I guess that's the neck in the middle. See what it looks like with just the metal. It sounds like. Let's listen to the humbuckers, I guess.
Okay. That humbucker's got a little kick to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that makes a humbucker single Strat, like both of these, work really well is because you can be up here in the neck or in the neck and middle position for the choruses and such. And when you go to a solo, you can put it in the humbucker, which automatically gives you a little bit of a boost, fattens up the sound, and it sounds great.
That's why it's nice to have a humbucker on with a couple of single coils.
Yeah.
You know?
It takes a pretty good player to get good tones out of a Strat single coil in the bridge without it getting really ice picky and harsh.
Yeah, and without you stomping on your pedals.
Yeah.
Right?
That helps.
So, yeah.
Well, it's a great looking guitar and it sounds great too. I really think Fender's got a winner here.
They do. I wonder what they're going to do with their line, though. As I mentioned before, they're putting a lot into this guitar at this price point, and they're the next couple of levels of Fender. What else can they really do with those? And I wonder if some of those mid, like the American Performer, I wonder if that's going to exist.
Yeah. Well,
going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, if nothing else, we'll probably start to see a revamp of some of those other lines, which, new guitars is always a good thing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what else they can do to them to justify, like this is let's call it an $800 guitar, and the American Performer is probably 12-ish. So I suppose electronics, you can definitely change the electronics, and that adds value to it. Locking tuners.
And for some people, there's definitely a benefit to to an American-made Stratocaster. One of them, I think, is the colors. The made in Mexico Stratocasters, the players and such, tend to have variations of the American colors. So if you're really looking for a Sonic blue, or you're really looking for a Lake Placid blue, or something like this is very similar to a Lake Placid blue Tele I used to have, but it's called Tide Pool because it's not exact. So I think for some people, if you're looking for something very specific,
this series was all like classic car colors, wasn't it? I had looked at a couple of the other colors that one of my local guitar stores had. And one of them was their coral red. I don't own a red guitar. Well, actually, I own a kind of a burgundy Telecaster, a Schecter. But I don't own like a red Strat. And I thought, well, a candy apple would be nice. This red, it's very nice, but it's a little bit too orangey for my taste. So I went with this birch green. And I do own a few green guitars, but it's a really, for me, I very much like the color. It's very nice.
It's a great color. It's a great color. And there are some new colors. I was looking on the website. There are some new colors, variations that are getting released in next month, October. One of them is a candy red, but it's a candy red transparent, so you can see the wood
I
grain
see the
through.
wood grain.
It's like
Okay.
it's like a burst dish.
Sure.
But it is cherry red, so maybe that'll be an opportunity for folks looking for that.
I'm honestly very impressed with this guitar.
I am too. I am too. I mean, I loved the Player I series, but I really like the changes they made. I love the. It's all superficial, but you know, guitar players we're playing instruments that were created 70 years ago, so
Right.
we're traditionalists by nature. I think I like the vintage tint. I like the classic gear tuners. I think the pickups sound great. It really is a guitar that you could buy and not change anything on, and play it for years. Whereas some of the prior to the Player series, people would, like I said, they'd buy it for basically the body, the neck, and the bridge, and they'd replace the electronics. And that seems to be done with these. You could replace it if you want, but those sound great.
I don't know if I'll do anything.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I initially thought, well, it'd be cool to upgrade it, kind of like just put a little bit of money into it, not make it like an American.
Right.
And I have a little bit more room to put a little bit into it because I got $200 off of it at the, right at the starting.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It really sounds, to my ears, it really sounds very nice, and it plays great. I mean, it's really. I'm very happy with the quality control, and I can't say I've always been happy with the American quality control.
No, I mean, it's run a little hot and cold at times. I've bought guitars that American-made guitars that really should not have had some of the problems they had. I mean, they were easily fixable problems, but at the price points they were at, there shouldn't have been a problem at all. And this came in and it looks great, sounds great, plays great.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, I think that's about all I have on this.
Great. Well, thank you for running through it, and thank you for joining us. If we haven't already mentioned it, like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to click the notification bell so you're notified when we have new videos. We release a new video about once a week.
I hope you've enjoyed our review of this Fender Player II Stratocaster. I'm certainly enjoying it. Highly recommend it if you're interested in this particular guitar. Plays great, sounds great, and I'm having a great time with it. I guess we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.